Welcome to the type space. In the last tutorial, we had a function as shown on the screen. Function 2, it took two parameters, it returned x plus y, and then we of course called the parameter in main, and we were going to run the program and it failed, and that's because of a thing called function prototyping. So what function prototyping is basically, like I said before, your compiler runs from the top to the bottom. So when it sees something up here that's already called, but it hasn't been declared yet. So like I have function 2 in my main, I'm saying, okay, run function 2, but it doesn't know what function 2 is yet because function 2 is down here. We have to create these things called prototypes, which are basically representations of what that function is, so that our computer knows that we want that function to be used anywhere within our program without having to write it on top of our main. So as you can see, if I run this, we get a fail because it doesn't know what function 2 is, because function 2 is below main and has not been declared. When we run it up top, the program runs perfectly because it declared, okay, it took function 2, saved it, it knew all the information about function 2, and then we passed the values to function 2. So, since it already knew what function 2 was, it had no problem running it. But if we run it on the bottom, again, which is something we don't want to do in programming, you don't want to have to always create your functions on top of your main, just because it's, it comes on very hard to organize. So what we do is we do this thing called function prototyping. So again, if we run this, we get a failed because it doesn't know what function 2 is. But if I take this whole line right here, excluding the brace, copy it, put it above main, and then put the semicolon, this is called a function prototype. So we're basically saying, in this program, I have an integer function 2 that takes two parameters, one integer x and one integer y, and I'm going to use it sometime. So just reference this. I want you to know this information before you do anything else. So before you do any other calculations, any of our function prototypes up here, which I'll actually put function prototype. And I don't know if I showed you guys this yet, but if you put 2 forward slashes, you can get comments. Comments don't affect the program. It basically is used to organize things. So I can say function prototypes, which this will be all the information or all the functions that are going to be somewhere in our program, but we don't want to specifically have to write them on top of our main. So we're just going to declare that that information is on the program. And the program is going to see this and be like, okay, I know this function because it's down here, and I can locate it now before I run the rest of everything. So when I run this with the prototype, it runs just as it did when we had our function above our main function, because it knows about the function before the function is declared. So we can do the same thing. If I create another function, I'll just say integer function 3 or 4 or whatever, and we do the same thing, and I just take integer t, integer p, and actually we'll do this one without parameters. So we have function 4, and on function 4 I just want to see out today is Sunday, end line. And basically all this function is going to say, today is Sunday. But since it's below the main, we're going to have to prototype it. So again, if I go to try to run this, and I say, hey main, I want you to go ahead and run function 4 for me, and then I want you to run function 2. It's going to say, okay, well, what's function 4? Because you don't have a prototype for function 4, therefore I don't know what that is. So what we're going to do again, just like we did before, even with no parameters, is we're going to take this integer function 4 with the parameters, whether they're empty or not, copy it, paste it up here on top of everything, end it with a semicolon, and that's prototype. So now, again, our computer knows function 4 is somewhere in here, so when you see it in main, don't freak out. Just hurry up and call it. You already know the information inside of it. And same thing for function 2. Since function 2 is prototyped, we already know about this, so when I see it in here, I'm not going to take it by surprise. I'm just going to go ahead and perform the job of that function. So when I run both of these, I get, okay, function 4 ran perfectly. It just see out today is Sunday. And then I get function 2, which was called second, with my parameters correct and everything. So I can close this, and again, if you want these values different, you can set them literally to, anything you want. 8,700 plus 6,000, because again, these parameters are being ran through this function. These values are being ran through this function, and these are actually declaring the values in order of the parameters that are set to the function. So while that might not make sense, if you watch the tutorial on functions, you definitely get what I'm talking about. If you watch the tutorial on parameters, you get what I'm talking about. Only thing that you need to know about this is when you're creating functions, you have to prototype the parameter, well, the type of function, the name of the function, and the parameters in the function above everything else in the program, so that your program knows that that function is somewhere in that set of code, so that when you go to your main and you go to call that function, your main doesn't freak out about it. It just understands, okay, I have this function, this is what it does, and I'm going to run it how it's supposed to be ran. Now, on the contrary, if I have a function written above main, and it might, like if I have function 4, delete it from here, and put it above main, I don't need this prototype, because when the function, or when my program runs, it's going to read function 4 before it even calls function 4. So I don't need the prototype for function 4, as long as it is, again, above the main. But if you are, like 99% of other programmers, you're not going to like this. Eventually, you're going to get tired of having to write everything above main, and then scrolling all the way down to find main, so that you can call your function. You're just going to say, screw that, I don't want to do that. I can just write my function wherever I want, it doesn't matter, as long as I have, my function prototype. Very important to understand how function prototyping works, and how parameters work when using function prototyping. But thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, again, leave them below and I will answer your questions. Other than that, I'll see you next time.